You sit down at the end of the evening and reach forward to pull off your shoes, and that is when you feel it. The fabric of the sock has left a groove pressed into the ankle that takes a full hour to soften. The skin there looks tight, a little shiny, drawn across the bone. The legs feel heavier than they did in the morning, as if something has been settling into them quietly all day long. If you want to understand why fluid is pooling in your lower legs through the night, and why you are waking with a heaviness that does not clear until close to noon, the answer is not another compression stocking, and it is not a prescription water pill that pulls fluid out while taking minerals with it. There is something the grandmothers of this tradition were doing before sleep, a practice carried quietly for generations in the old plant medicine that addresses what is actually failing in the tissue. I will show you what that is today. Hello, my friend. I am Maddie. I want you to stay with me this evening because what I am going to walk you through could change how you wake up each morning. For women past 50, leg swelling that settles in and holds is not just discomfort. It quietly steals the things that make your daily life feel like yours. Things like being able to get down to the garden soil and stay there long enough to plant a full row without your ankles aching for 2 days after. Things like standing at the kitchen counter through a whole Sunday dinner without your calves screaming by the time you set down the last dish. Your doctor may have handed you a diuretic and sent you home in under 10 minutes, not because they do not care, but because what actually rebuilds circulation and vascular tone after 50 is not housed in any pharmaceutical handbook, and a rushed appointment does not leave room for the old knowledge. Tonight, that changes. What I'm going to share can melt that fluid buildup while you sleep and begin rebuilding the pathways that carry life through your legs. My name is Maddie. For over 40 years, I have kept an apothecary and a working garden in the high desert hills of northern New Mexico. The knowledge I carry came to me slowly, the way the good things always do. My mother taught me what her mother had taught her, and before that, the Italian country women of our family line were mixing these same herbs in kitchens far across the ocean. Over the decades, I deepened that foundation through study with the curanderas of Taos and Santa Fe, the old herb gardeners of the Southwest, and the seed keepers who held the plant wisdom when no one else thought it worth keeping. My grandmother used to say that all sickness eventually comes home to the belly. She did not mean the stomach alone. She meant the whole of the gut, that long living channel that governs how we absorb, how we fight, how we sleep, and how the body manages the fluid in our tissues. The laboratories have been circling that truth for decades now, and what they are finding confirms what the grandmothers in this tradition always understood. Everything downstream, how the blood vessel walls hold their tone, how inflammation behaves in the body, how the lymphatic channels move, it all traces back to the ground condition inside you. We will come back to that. My grandmother did this practice before sleep for the last 30 years of her life. Her mother did it before her. The women who taught me in Taos watched their grandmothers do the same. In 5 generations of this tradition, I have rarely seen the kind of chronic, persistent leg swelling that now shows up in so many women past 60. These women aged, of course they did. But they had a nightly ritual that kept the fluids moving and the circulation supported in the lower limbs. Researchers from botanical medicine programs have since begun looking at the specific plants this tradition relied on, and what they have found confirms those herbs carry real effects on vascular wall tone and lymphatic clearance. The old seed keepers would have smiled at those findings and said they were glad someone finally thought to look. Now, one part of what I am about to share is going to surprise you. It surprised me the first time I saw it done, and by that point I had already spent 15 years studying plants. 9 out of 10 people who try to address leg swelling at home focus on the wrong part of the body, and they focus on it first before the body is prepared to receive anything at all. The order of what I am teaching today is not optional. Each part builds on what came before it. Stay with me through the end, my friend, because the piece most people skip entirely is the one that decides whether all the rest of it works. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Tell me your age, and tell me one thing. Is the swelling happening in one leg or both? This matters to me because it helps shape what I teach next. I read every single comment on this channel, and what you share helps me understand what the women in this community need most. So please take a moment and let me know. Here is what we are covering today. First, what is actually happening inside the leg tissues and why the usual approaches keep missing the real target. Then the exact protocol this tradition has used before sleep with the specific herbs, the specific temperatures, and the specific sequence, because none of it is interchangeable. After that, 3 supporting practices I always pair with the main work, the ones that quietly multiply what the herbs begin. And at the end, the single most important practice in everything I teach about leg health after 50, the one the old seed keepers called the evening river, which most women have never heard of, and which our tradition has relied on for generations to do the deep clearing the body cannot accomplish while upright. One small favor before we begin. If you have not subscribed to this channel yet, would you take 2 seconds and hit that button now? It costs nothing, and it means these teachings reach more of the senior women who need them. Many folks who come back here every week discovered they had never actually subscribed. If that is you, a quick click does more good than you might think. Let me tell you what is actually happening in those legs. When fluid pools in the lower limbs and stays, the common explanation points to the heart working harder, the kidneys slowing, or too much sodium in the diet. Those things can contribute. But there is a layer beneath that explanation that the standard conversation almost never reaches. The veins in the legs rely on a system of tiny valves to push blood upward against gravity, back toward the heart. After 50, the walls of those vessels become less elastic, the valves function less cleanly, and the lymphatic channels responsible for clearing the fluid that seeps from the capillaries into the surrounding tissue grow sluggish when circulation is poor and when the body is carrying low-grade chronic inflammation. Many people treat leg swelling as a plumbing problem. Pour less fluid in, drain more out with a diuretic, prop the feet up at night. What the women who taught me observed across generations is that vascular tone and lymphatic movement are where the real attention belongs. Compression stockings squeeze from the outside. Pharmacy creams sit on the skin. Neither one reaches what is happening at the tissue level. The protocol I am going to walk you through works from a different angle entirely. The practice centers on a warm herbal infusion made from horse chestnut, yarrow, and rosemary, applied in a specific sequence before sleep. Let me explain the mechanism plainly, my friend. Horse chestnut contains a compound called acin. Acin acts directly on the capillary walls, reducing their permeability so that less fluid seeps out into the surrounding tissue. It also tones the vein walls themselves, helping the valves open and close more cleanly. Think of a garden hose that has gone soft and begun to weep at every seam. Acin firms the structure back up from the inside. Yarrow has been used by the plant keepers of this region for as long as anyone I learned from can remember, as a herb that moves the blood and reduces the kind of inflammation that makes vascular walls slow and sticky. The research that has come forward in recent years confirms that the flavonoids in yarrow support circulation and help quiet the vascular inflammation this tradition always knew it addressed. The women who taught me never needed that confirmation, but they would have nodded quietly at anyone who came with it. Rosemary brings warmth into the peripheral circulation and stimulates the lymphatic vessels near the surface of the skin to begin moving. Together, these 3 herbs accomplish something that none of them achieves working alone. And the aging-specific reality here is significant. After 60, microcirculation in the lower limbs can decline by as much as 30% compared to what it was at 40. This is almost never discussed. The tissue in your calves and ankles may be receiving meaningfully less blood flow than it was 20 years ago, and the soak this tradition has used was developed precisely to address that deficit. Here is how you prepare and use the infusion, exactly as I have taught it for over 40 years. Bring 2 quarts of water to around 175 degrees just before a rolling boil. Add 2 tablespoons of dried horse chestnut leaf, 1 tablespoon of dried yarrow flower, and 1 tablespoon of dried rosemary. Cover and steep for 20 minutes. While the infusion steeps, lie down and elevate your legs above your heart for 10 minutes. Use pillows beneath the calves, not only beneath the feet, so that when you settle back and let your hands rest at your sides, you can feel the backs of your knees genuinely lift. This begins the gravitational drainage before any herb touches the skin. The tradition I learned from always insisted on this step first. You must clear the road before you bring anything new to it. When the infusion has cooled to a warm, comfortable temperature, pour it into a basin deep enough to cover your calves. Soak for 15 minutes. Then wring out a clean cloth in the same liquid and wrap it around your calves and the back of your knees as a compress. Keep the compress in place for 10 more minutes while your legs remain elevated. Do this every evening for 3 weeks before drawing any conclusions. Improvement in lymphatic tone is gradual. Many people notice their shoes fitting a little looser in the first week. The tissue heaviness typically begins to shift in the second. By week 3, most of the folks I have worked with describe waking with legs that feel noticeably lighter by morning. If you are on blood thinners or have been diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis, please speak with your doctor before applying any herbal preparation to the lower legs. Now, something I want to say about why some women do this faithfully and see strong results, while others do it just as faithfully and see very little. After 60, the gut can lose 40% or more of its beneficial microbial diversity compared to younger decades. Probiotics alone cannot correct this without prebiotic fiber feeding the bacteria. And without postbiotics, the actual compounds healthy bacteria produce, the gut lining cannot quiet the inflammation that stiffens vascular walls and keeps it running underneath everything else you try. Think of it as a garden. The seeds are the probiotics. The composted soil is the prebiotic. The fruit the garden produces is the postbiotic. Without all 3 working together in the right conditions, the ground stays depleted and everything you plant on it struggles. Let me give you 3 things I always pair with the main protocol, my friend. The first is dry brushing before the soak begins. 5 minutes of long upward strokes from the ankle to the knee using a natural bristle brush, always moving toward the heart. This manually stimulates the lymphatic vessels just beneath the surface of the skin and prepares the tissue to receive the herbal soak more fully. The curanderas I learned from called it waking the channels. It consistently speeds the visible improvement in nearly everyone who adds it. Let me pause here for a moment because the folks who come to me with these leg questions ask about internal support more than almost anything else, and I want to address that directly. Something I have been recommending alongside the herbal work is BoochBod, a daily kombucha gummy that brings together all 3 parts of what I just described above. Prebiotics, probiotics, and 2 clinically studied strains called lactospore and postbiotics LM1004, along with dandelion root and slippery elm, 2 plants that grew on the hillsides behind our family property long before anyone in our line thought to look for them at a market. Over 30,000 people are already using it, and it is a gummy rather than a pill, which matters more than people realize when you are older and capsule fatigue is real. The link is waiting in the description below if you want to take a look. And please speak to your doctor before starting any supplement. The second supporting practice is a cold water rinse at the close of the soak. Before stepping out of the basin, pour a small amount of cool water over the lower legs for 30 seconds, pouring from the ankle upward. The contrast between warm and cool causes the vessel walls to contract and release, which accelerates the lymphatic clearing the soak has already begun. Third, a cup of hawthorn and ginger tea before bed. Hawthorn supports the heart's ability to push blood efficiently through the smaller vessels. Ginger keeps peripheral circulation active through the sleep hours. Together, they continue the work the soak has started, the way a quiet second crew arrives after the first shift has done the heavy clearing. And now we arrive at what I consider the most important practice in everything I have shared today, the one I would give you if you could only take one thing home. The old seed keeper from Taos, who gave me the full version of this protocol, called it the evening river. My grandmother called it clearing the trunk before you ask the branches to move. It is elevation done in a specific way, with specific breathing, within the first 30 minutes of lying down. And almost nobody does it correctly. The lymphatic system has no pump of its own. It moves through three forces: muscle contraction, breath, and gravity. When you are upright all day, the lymph in your lower limbs is fighting gravity with only two of those forces available. The moment you lie flat, gravity becomes neutral. When you elevate the legs above the heart, gravity begins working in your favor. And when you add slow, deep diaphragmatic breathing, you activate the thoracic duct, which is the central channel through which all lymph from the lower body must pass before re-entering circulation. Here is the aging reality that changes everything about this. After 65, diaphragmatic strength declines, and shallow chest breathing becomes the default for many women, particularly those who have spent decades at a desk, a screen, or a kitchen sink. When the breath stays shallow and high in the chest, the thoracic duct is barely stimulated. The lymph moves slowly. The legs hold more fluid than they should. The legs are following what the breathing is doing, and that is where the answer lives. Here is the practice exactly. Lie on a firm surface. Place 2 pillows beneath your calves so the legs are raised approximately 18 inches above your chest, not just elevated at the feet. Set a timer for 20 minutes. For the first 5 minutes, breathe slowly and deliberately into the belly, feeling the lower ribs expand outward with each inhale, not just the chest rising. In the next 5 minutes, add slow ankle circles, 20 in each direction, to activate the calf muscle pump. In the final 10 minutes, rest completely. Let gravity do the clearing. Do this every evening within the first 30 minutes of lying down. The cumulative effect across 3 weeks is measurable. By the 4th week, most women I have worked with describe the legs as feeling genuinely lighter upon waking, not merely less swollen, but more responsive, more alive, more their own. One of those women was Dorothy, 72 years old, a retired school teacher from Taos, New Mexico. She had been wearing compression stockings every day for 3 years. Her ankles were visibly swollen by noon, regardless of how carefully she watched her diet or how much water she drank. She had tried the diuretic teas, the elevation pillow, a prescription her doctor had offered. None of it held. She tried the herbal soak for 2 weeks and saw moderate improvement. When we added the elevation protocol done as I described, with the deep belly breathing and the ankle work, she reported back at week 4 that the visible swelling had reduced by over 35%. By the end of that month, she left me a message that said, "Maddie, I wore a pair of shoes yesterday I have not been able to close in 2 years. Sister, I want that for you." After more than 40 years of watching what actually works and what fades after a week, here are 3 principles that separate the people who see lasting results from the ones who do not. 1. Consistency over intensity. A 15-minute soak done every single night for a month will accomplish more than an hour-long soak done twice a week. The lymphatic system responds to rhythmic, repeated, gentle stimulation. It does not respond well to occasional dramatic efforts. 2. Temperature matters more than duration. The infusion must be genuinely warm when you apply it, warm enough that you feel the heat at the skin within the first 30 seconds. If the soak water has cooled to the point where you can lower your hand into it without feeling much warmth at all, it is too cool to produce the vascular response you need. Reheat it. 3. The elevation angle is not optional. Many people prop only their feet and call it elevation. The calves must be raised above the level of the heart for the gravitational drainage to reach the deeper lymphatic channels. Check whether your knees are above your chest. If they are not, add another pillow beneath the calves. 3 errors I see most often when people try this at home. Mistake 1. Using only one herb instead of the full combination. Many people have horse chestnut on hand, but not yarrow, so they proceed with just the one. Each herb in this preparation targets a different mechanism. Horse chestnut addresses vascular permeability. Yarrow addresses inflammation and blood movement. Rosemary drives circulation into the surface tissue. Remove any one of them, and you weaken the whole preparation significantly. Mistake 2. Doing the soak without the prior elevation. The 10-minute gravitational drainage before you begin the soak is not a preparation step you can skip when you are tired. Without it, the tissue is still holding the fluid pooled through the day, and the herbs land on congested ground rather than prepared ground. The difference in how the soak feels on prepared tissue versus tissue that has not been drained is something most people notice after doing both. Clear the road first. Mistake 3. Expecting results in 3 days and drawing conclusions too early. Many people try something faithfully for a week, see only partial improvement, and decide it is not working. Lymphatic tone is rebuilt across weeks, not days. The women in this tradition gave any new practice 30 days before they offered an opinion. That patience is not just waiting, it is part of the work. My friend, I want to say something before we close. What we have been talking about today is not really about ankles. It is about your mornings. It is about stepping out of bed without that first cautious moment of wondering whether the legs will hold today. It is about being able to kneel beside a grandchild who is showing you something important on the floor and staying there long enough to actually see it. Your whole unrushed attention. Those mornings and that kneeling, that is what this work is protecting. It is never too late to begin. The body you are living in at 70, at 75, at 80 is still listening. It is still responsive. The plants in this tradition were not developed for young people who had time and ease. They were developed for older people who needed to keep going. You are the driver of this body, and you always have been. Let me pull it together for you before we close. First, what is actually happening in the leg tissue? Vascular tone and lymphatic movement decline after 50, and the usual approaches address the fluid rather than the function. The protocol this tradition uses works at the tissue level. Second, the 3-herb infusion. Horse chestnut for the vessel walls, yarrow for circulation and inflammation, rosemary for surface warmth and lymphatic stimulation. Prepared at 175 degrees, steeped for 20 minutes, applied warm. Third, the full soak sequence. 10 minutes of elevation before the soak to drain the tissue, 15 minutes in the warm basin, then 10 minutes of warm compress while the legs remain raised. Fourth, the 3 supporting practices. Dry brushing before the soak to wake the lymphatic channels, cold water rinse after to stimulate the vessels, hawthorn and ginger tea before bed to sustain the work through the night, and the master practice. The 20-minute evening elevation protocol, legs 18 inches above the chest, 5 minutes of deep diaphragmatic breathing, 5 minutes of ankle circles, 10 minutes of complete rest, done within the first 30 minutes of lying down so that gravity and breath do together what they cannot do apart. If this was useful to you today, I hope you will subscribe to this channel. And if you know someone, a spouse, a sibling, an oldest friend who is waking up every morning to heavy legs, please share this video with them. They deserve to know it too. Leave me a comment and tell me which part of this you are going to start first. I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to hear from you. The BoochBod link I mentioned is in the description below whenever you are ready to take a look. I will see you in the next one. Take good care of yourself, my friend.